Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Delacluse with RAECO Rents. I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for our webinar. A web link of today's webinar recording and slides will be emailed in the next couple days, and a certificate for attending today will be emailed 1 hour after the webinar concludes. Our presenter today is Chris Ward of Slate Safety. In this 60-minute webinar, he will cover the following: driving changes, heat stress and wearables, highlights from the new OSHA heat stress NEP, heat stress program processes that are tried and true. Chris is a technology veteran who currently serves as the VP of Growth at Slate Safety. He has 10 years working in technology in a variety of roles at the intersection of innovation and application. Slate Safety is a technology startup based in Atlanta, Georgia, at the edge of the connected safety revolution. His team's mission is to bring reliable, rugged, and easy to use safety solutions to heavy industrial applications. The focus of that mission is to put the worker at the center of safety and their next generation product, the Band V2. Does just that. As an arm-worn wearable, this IoT device provides real-time alerting and historical trend analysis to allow safety professionals to intervene before incidents occur, while also identifying operational inefficiencies of workloads. We welcome Chris as a friend and speaker. We thank him for sharing his time and expertise with our customers today. Because of the large number of attendees, all attendees will be muted. If you have a question, there's a question box in GoToWebinar. Please use that and enter your question. We'll see if we can answer them at the end. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Chris. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me, sir. I sure do appreciate that. Yeah, so today, this is, obviously what we're going to talk about, and would like to thank, before we get started, RAECO Rents, obviously, for bringing me in and letting me speak a little bit. If you guys are interested in anything that we're talking about today, obviously reach out to RAECO Rents. They now have, are one of our newest partners in providing this solution to the field, and we're super excited. So we're looking forward to the future. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Of course, today's topic, as Matt just talked about, is we want to talk about heat stress and we want to talk about wearables. And then sprinkled throughout, we want to hit some of those highlights that you guys, are already starting to think about, particularly the new OSHA NEP. We'll talk a little bit about that. I do have a section in here kind of talking about some of those signs and symptoms of heat stress, but that most likely won't be that won't be the real topic that we're discussing here. But I'm Chris Ward, as Matt said, with our company Slate Safety. There's our contact information right there if you guys wanted to reach out. Looking forward to get going here. So what are we talking about today? Matt hit the highlights there. Here's kind of the rest of the agenda that we're going to talk about. As I described, we're gonna briefly hit on heat stress, those signs, those symptoms. Those are super important right now. I know that a lot of you guys are starting to kind of look towards temperatures are getting hotter. Looking at that training program that you guys have, the one that you guys had last year. Hey, do we want to upgrade it? What do we want to update? These types of things. We'll talk a little bit about the OSHA NEP as I described, and then we'll move a little bit more into some of those tools you guys are going to be way more familiar with than me. You guys have been using a lot of these methods for a good while now, and for good reason. So we'll hit on those, just highlight those, and then we'll pivot a little bit more into that technology aspect of it. Obviously, us here at Slate Safety, we're super excited about the technology. We're super excited about the future, the innovation that is coming and is to come. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with a little kind of some real life examples. It's always, of course, nice to talk about things that are actually happening, not just whiteboard. Maybe it'll happen, it might happen. These things are actually happening. So first up, what is heat stress? You guys have seen charts like this for a while now. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on here, but as we do approach the springtime, the temperature is starting to increase. We do want to be mindful of these. You can never get enough of this stuff. You can never bring enough education to those signs and symptoms to look for. That's kind of the foundation of any great program, is just bringing that educational training piece to it. And then you can see, of course, the kind of the progression, that you would expect to see somebody have right there. Heat stress is interesting, like a few hazards. Maybe, certainly not all hazards, but it's very individualistic in how it comes onto people. A lot of these different factors. This chart right here, you guys have seen this before. It came straight from OSHA's website. I'm pretty sure. Some of those things that we're looking for in any program is these different factors that do affect these individuals that are in the program. So those environmental factors, you talk about the temperature, the humidity, are we getting air movement, through these areas that people are in? You guys all know this stuff. And then of course the person, the worker there, what are those things that are going into that person's body? Where have they, how old are they? How long have they been doing this type of work? Their fitness level, the different types of medication, these types of things all play a factor in this heat stress type of environment. And these are all the challenges, and why heat stress is kind of unique in that approach is that there are so many different levers and buttons that can be pushed to kind of move people into areas that they shouldn't be really. So here's again, it's probably some stuff that you guys have seen before. This is some of the statistics. This one right here is actually interesting because it comes straight from the NEP that we'll talk about here in the next slide. But we know these environments that people are in, we know they're heating up, indoor, outdoor, for a number of reasons. We know that these things are happening. We know that there's an uptake in the cases that we're seeing as recorded, and also also those cases that we don't know of. We've probably all been in those situations where you or your team, you guys have pushed it to the limit, and then you're fine. It's not first aid needed, no medical emergency needed. But then you take the afternoon off, or you come in a little late the next day, or something like that. Those all kind of play into it. I mean, even though they go unrecorded, those are certainly real things that we've all felt when we've been out on the job site. So these stats are obviously important, and you guys have seen these high-level stats before, but we all know kind of the undercurrent for them and how heat stress and a lot of other physiological events can go unnoticed. Okay, so this is probably, there was probably someone's having a bet right now how many times I'm going to say hot topic in a talk like this, but of course the National Emphasis Program, the NEP, this is a hot topic. This is probably at the forefront of a lot of what you guys are thinking of right now. You might be a manager that's really in tune with this. You might have received word from your manager that's really in tune with this, but almost guaranteed somebody at your company somewhere is following this very closely. And this is certainly something to be mindful of. For those of you that hadn't had a chance to read it, the new OSHA NEP standard, there's of course the link right there. You guys go on there and take a look at it. But this NEP is it's kind of just like any other kind of government work. It's like you might not agree with it, you might not think it's the right thing, but they're going to give you, typically they'll give you some heads up on it. So in that NEP, if you go through and you read it, there's plenty of heads up in it. And here's just a couple of quick bullets that I took from it, just to bring awareness to it. But as you go through that NEP, they're going to they document why they're enabling it, who's involved in it, who what they'll look for to engage these resources to go out and go on site and do the do the investigation. It's out there, it's in there. And as you go through and you look at it, your organization probably certainly falls into it one way or another. It may not, for sure, and it may not fall into the complete purview of it. But they'll provide that. They provide that information to you, and then also they provide what they're looking for. To go out on site. One of the big things that they're looking at is, hey, when the heat index hits 80 degrees, we want to start pushing people out and begin looking at these sites. Now, that's both indoor and outdoor. So something to be mindful of is, even if you're indoors and you think it may not apply to you, of course it certainly does, and to be able to take those type of calculations and understand, when they might show up and when they won't show up, kind of an idea is important. Over there on the right is just one of their calculations. You guys probably a lot of you guys have seen this calculator before, very simple calculator, but you know, it's effective. It's a tool that they're going to be using to help guide when they will arrive. So 80 is that magic number, kind of that first part. And then when they arrive on site, they describe what they're looking for. And you know, as they go through the checklist, which you guys have probably seen before, there's a number of things in that checklist, but maybe one of the more important things is they're looking for, hey, you know, is there a program at this site? Does this site have a heat stress program? And in that program, what's in that program? Could be, you know, obviously a number of things depending on the type of work that's occurring, the type of risk factors that are out there. A few things could suffice in that program. You know, just because we're having this conversation today, you know, physiological monitoring is not, you know, it's not going to be one of those checks that they look for officially, idea. But certainly, I've had more than one conversation with the people in the know that physiological monitoring can go a long way in helping to establish there's an effective program for, hey, you know, we treat these issues seriously, idea. And then that second bullet right there is just, you know, it had verbal confirmation from this as well, is that, you know, the past couple of years, you know, there's been funding to do it. There just hasn't, you know, for one reason or another, you know, namely COVID, been able to get out and visit sites. But 2023 is going to be going to see an uptick. You know, had that confirmation more than one occasion. So it's just something to be mindful of. Most likely, you know, all your guys' programs are probably, you guys are doing well as is, but just something to be mindful of. I'm sure you guys are already thinking about. All right, perfect. So we've kind of talked a little bit about heat stress, talked a little bit about the NEP. You know, what are those tools? What are those processes that you know, most likely you guys have already been doing? As we described, there's certainly tried and true methods, and you know, you guys know these methods better than I do for sure. You guys know the good, the bad, the ugly of these methods. You know, maybe, and not every tool is for every situation, for every person, etc. But you know, these are the tools that, you know, people have been using for a while. So here's some right here that I'm sure you guys are implementing, and you know, it kind of runs the hierarchy of controls, of course. But you know, simple things like, hey, can we shift the work? So we're not moving maybe next, you know, we're not working next to this heat source. Can we do that? We're not working in the hottest part of the day. Can we shift the schedule for this? And you know, it certainly won't work in every circumstance, but certainly always find it interesting when, you know, organizations have kind of moved to like, hey, we're starting work at 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, man, that's kind of early for me, but I guess it does beat doing that work in, you know, in the middle of the hot day. You get off a little early, kind of an idea. But then some of those engineering controls, these, you know, very effective. You know, have a tent out, and you know, a lot of these things that we're talking about here don't cost a whole lot of money to have out there either. But getting the airflow, you know, making sure that there's water in place, you know, the simple things, you know, they make a lot of sense and they go a long way for sure. Fans, having some big fans out there is always good. And then seeing if there's something, you know, can we maybe we can't do the work, but can we put some kind of shield? Can we put some kind of barrier between us and the heat source to help kind of bring that temperature down? And then over there on the right, of course, some of those other things that have already been in place. But you know, from a program standpoint, do we have an acclimatization a process? You know, are we slowly introducing this work that people are doing? You know, are we you know, methodologically, you know, going through these steps? Are we offering job rotations? Can we switch people around? Is there, you know, some way that we can better administrate at this site that we're at? Then, of course, here's some of those tools that we're going to talk a little bit more about. You know, the wet bulb glow thermometer. You know, one of those major tools of choice. You know, certainly highlighted in the NEP, and a tool that we would even see slate safety. We would even say that's not going away anytime soon for right now. And then some of those other ones, you know, that you guys, you know, probably, you know, maybe using to, you know, a higher or lesser extent. Here's a quick picture kind of showing some of those tools right there. You know, some of those ones that obviously I know you guys are using, that you guys have been using, that are very effective. They're just the widget right there. You know, like we were saying, it's certainly not going in away anytime soon. It's very effective at you know, understanding the environment, and then of course from that those calculations that we know, you know, building these different stay times depending on the type of PPE being worn or the type of work being worn, etc. There's some more of those other kind of tools, starting to get to be a little more technical. SpO2s, well, a watch, maybe not a whole lot, but just keeping track of time. People are in certain situations depending on those readings, etc. Water. That picture up in the right, I'm guessing most of you guys know this, but maybe some of you guys don't. But forearm immersion, that's certainly something. We might not see it as much in the industrial space, but in the military space, it's certainly a tool of choice just to get a lot of people through. Drop the temperature down for these trainees that are going through. We do see that a lot out in the field, and that's just a picture. That bucket that they're looking at right there, that's just got cold water in it. Got a long list of trainees just coming through. Do it just like you would expect. Dunk your forearms, kind of an idea. Okay. Cool. And also, if you guys are using anything maybe new, maybe after this, love to hear it. I'm always interested to hear kind of the new tools that are out there that people are using that maybe we're unaware of. All right. So what's new? We talked a little bit about heat stress, talked a little bit about NEP, some of those tools that are already out there being used. But what are some of those new tools, Chris? What are some of those new things? And that's, of course, something that we're very interested in. One of those things that we're going to talk about today, or the thing that we're going to talk about today, is wearables. This is, it's kind of a funny little, obviously, picture right here, but, wearables can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, depending on the person, the situation, the environment, a lot of different things. This one, of course, is obviously very, it's more consumer focused in this essence. You see some things that probably just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense out on a job site, and then some things I mean they might exist. I'm not even 100% sure, but smart socks, smart pants, smart belt even. Some of you guys might have some of those, but I haven't yet been an adopter of those things. But we know the kind of space that we're living in is that sensors are getting smaller, batteries are getting better, and there's a miniaturization that's occurring. Where basically we're trying to slap a sensor onto a lot of different things, kind of an idea. So depending on where you're at, what you're doing, a wearable can mean a lot of different things. But here on today's call, this is what we're going to talk about. What type of wearable we talk about today. Here's just another kind of way to think about it. But if you think about technology, all right, that's a big bucket. There's a lot of things under technology, if you will. But underneath that technology, we're not talking, of course, today about AI. We're not talking about machine learning, Chat GPT. All those pretty cool. We won't be speaking about that. We're going to be looking a little bit more into this wearable category. Now, that wearable category, as we just saw, that's still a big category, still a big bucket. Underneath that, we're starting to get a little closer. We're going to be speaking about safety wearables. We're not talking about fitness-focused wearables. We're not talking about medical wearables. We're not talking about any of those. And although, in this little chart that we have here, a lot of overlap can for sure occur. Those are things that are kind of different than what we're talking about today. Underneath safety wearables, we like to view that there's kind of a couple paths here. There's certainly the environmental monitors that people probably a little more familiar with, to be honest with you, but gas monitors, they've certainly been around for a while now, where people wear it on themselves to kind of understand how that environment's doing that they're working in. But we're focused a little more on this personal monitoring side. But then, of course, there's still some more choices underneath that. Underneath that, there's a couple different methods that these wearable technologies can use. And these are the two that I've seen. So, you can see the electrocardiography and the photoplethysmography that we're talking about there. Of course, I would much rather prefer not to say those words over and over again. So, you can just think about it as an electrical and an optical based sensor technology for that wearable. There's even wearables, that you can see for, echocardiography. And here you're using sound to understand how something's doing. But I've never seen one of those, particularly certainly not in the safety space. Maybe somebody else has, and that'd be interesting to learn more about. But that's something that you would see a little more in those medical settings from a personal standpoint. So here we're focusing on that bottom one right there, that optical based, and even underneath there, over on the left side of the slide, you can see, you know, there's two methods underneath that that you could look at. So you can see on that chart right there, you have the circle with a slash through it. You know, light going through an extremity and reading that that data on the other side, versus what we're a little more focused on today, but light reflecting off the skin and reading that that data. So, all right, so we've kind of narrowed it down a little bit. We've narrowed it down to a little bit more into the technology that we're talking about today. All right, fantastic. Here's just a really simplistic way to think about it in that PPG sensor. So this sensor, this type of technology is going to be the same type of technology that you see on, you know, your your Garmin, your Apple Watches, Fitbit. You know, a lot of these fitness-focused kind of tools, they use this exact same technology. If you were to flip over any one of those solutions, you see that flickering green light, and that's exactly what that light's doing. It's sending some light onto the skin, and it's reading the reflection of that light to see you know what's happening with that particular heart rate in most of these cases. So with that information, you can make a measurement on that heart rate, and then from that kind of foundation, then you can start to do some really cool things. And you know, we could probably do a quick survey in the room and see how many people are using this technology right now, and think about all those cool things that are happening. We think it's really cool now that this technology's that we're bringing this technology into the safety space, because there's a lot of application, a lot of utility to use this type of technology. So we're super excited. That scan me right there is just something, if you guys were interested to take a view at. This was a study that we partnered with the University of Alabama. That study is particularly looking at our tool as compared to some other tools out there. But there's certainly a number of published works out there kind of describing this technology and how it works. Cool. All right, so we're building. We've talked about heat stress. We've talked about the NEP and how it's important. We've described some of those tools that are out there. We started to look at some of that technology that is out there, and some of that technology that we can bring to some other aspects of the business. Try to be look to be innovative, try things new. Probably a lot of you guys, and I guess just for me being here, I'm sure you guys are obviously interested in this technology and trying to evaluate, is this technology interesting to my workers? Is it interesting to my team, my organization? So anytime you're going through those types of ideas, you're really trying to gauge, hey, I'm current. This is my current state. Last year we did these things. Now there's some new influences. We're thinking about upgrading our program. We're thinking about changing some things around. There's leadership change, a number of things, obviously, in that current state that get you thinking, hey, maybe we should switch some things out this year. So really what you're doing is you're looking for, hey, we're in current state. We want to get to this future state and trying to evaluate if that is the case. If that is the case, of course, what's going to happen is there's going to be some change. Not rocket science that we're talking about right here, but certainly on the slate safety side, when we speak to somebody that's interested in this technology is not for everybody. It's not for every situation. It's not for every worker. It's just like any one of those tools that we saw in the previous screen. It's just another tool in the toolbox. But as you, as the organization, as you guys begin to think, hey, this might be something we want to investigate, pilot, try, before we roll out. Maybe you guys have already started doing that, just ready to roll out fully. These are things you're looking at. You're looking at, and us as slate safety, this is what we're talking to our customers about. Hey, let's understand the worker. Let's talk to the worker. What's going on at the project site, at the site level. What's going on at the enterprise level. Each one of these stakeholders is interested in kind of, what's in it for me, kind of an idea. And that's the mindset that it really takes to build a successful investigation on whether, this new change that we're going towards is going to work for us. So we know, the worker has a different mindset as compared to the site that's out there managing the workers, as opposed to the enterprise that's in charge of, multiple sites along the way. So this is what we think about. And the important thing is that when you're going through that, that you're trying to align these efforts for these people. So these slides that we're talking about right here, and this is kind of the last one, like this. these aren't just specific to physiological monitoring from my side. These, of course, are interesting to, hey, we're implementing some new tool for payroll, or we're implementing some new tool for environmental monitoring. We're doing any number of these things, but it's aligning these people to get the momentum that you need to affect that change. So for the worker, these are some of those things that we hear that you guys may already be thinking, or you guys might have already have heard, but that worker, why am I wearing it? What's in it for me? Kind of an idea. How does this change what I'm doing? Because if it's a tool that is cumbersome to wear, or it just gets in my way or prohibits me from completing my job more quickly, it's going to be a tall order to convince me that I have to use this thing. And then certainly there's a privacy level at the worker level. There's a privacy concern, at the worker level. Hey, who's seeing this data? Particularly when we're talking about physiological monitoring, obviously, it's very important. What are they doing with that data? Are they, using that data, to help me for safety? There's some kind of ulterior motive to it? I, the worker, I want to see that transparency, so I feel comfortable that this new thing that you're making me wear is going to help me out. Idea. And then, of course, you move up to the project level or the site level, kind of an idea. It's very similar type of questions. It's a different perspective, though. Now you're starting to look at, hey, will my workers adopt this? Some of you probably are shaking your head and be like, no, they're not gonna do this technology. It's a tall order. Or some of you are already thinking like, hey, this is certainly a tool that we need. The risk versus that these workers are in is very, very high, kind of idea. But same type of, privacy is an important thing at this level as well, because now this kind of intermediary is kind of, they're trying to work, keep the worker happy, but also that enterprise level happy. So is this, how do we plan to use it? Is this something that, are we just in kind of an investigation phase, kind of baselining? Have you already received a visit from a regulatory body, telling us to do something, kind of an idea? And now you're starting to look at this level, like, hey, that data that widget is on, is that good data? Is that accurate data? Can I make informed decisions on it? And then, is it difficult to implement, et cetera, et cetera? And at each one of these levels, you're also looking for, what's the alternative here? Now, the worker, he might say that, I'm fine. I can tell you when I'm gonna, not feel good, kind of an idea. The project, they might want a little bit more, kind of, a little more of a nudge, saying, hey, that worker over there is not feeling too good, kind of an idea. And then kind of here at Slate Safe, when we think about that high level, we think about that enterprise, similar kind of ideas. It's just, of course, a different perspective. But now you're looking across my workforce. How, who's seeing my workforce's data? Are the right people seeing that data? From a cybersecurity standpoint, is the data safe? Idea. Is the worker wearing the solution correctly? A lot of these programmatic type of questions. Is it being implemented correctly? Are we adhering to the guidelines? Is there, the guideline that, this regulatory body says? Are we following that with this new tool? Is it helping us to follow that? Is it hurting us to follow that? And then, yeah, can we demonstrate it? We probably, at the highest level, a lot of times, sometimes we'll say, we feel like we're doing a certain thing, and then we might take a tour, we might site visit, we go around, we're like, oh boy, we're not what we thought we were, kind of an idea. And then probably at the enterprise level, it's just it's a lot of, like a lot of calculations. Is there an alternative that we can use that gives us enough ROI that we feel comfortable with, kind of an idea. But these are some of the questions. Of course, there's many more questions like this. But depending on that level, depending on that question that individual, that project site, that work the enterprise is asking, we like to think it kind of falls into two buckets, really. It's kind of this utility, can that thing work? Is it working? Kind of an idea. And then do we trust that thing? Do we trust that what that device, what that tool is providing us? And that can be, everything from does that thing say, does it do what it says it does? Kind of an idea. Are we good from a cybersecurity standpoint? A number of things under that trust that enable us to feel comfortable with that information that we're getting from that thing. And then, yeah, utility, just, all those things, Can the worker that's out in the field, can they properly wear it? Can the administrator in the tool, can they properly administer the tool from a program standpoint? Can we get that information? Hey, is that thing economical enough for us to deploy? If it's too cost prohibitive, it honestly almost doesn't matter what kind of benefit you're looking for. You're not going to get it. And same thing goes with the trust. If you don't trust it at all, it doesn't matter how cheap it is. You're not going to use it. Kind of an idea. But that's just kind of a framework that we view on this side to kind of start thinking about when we have these conversations with people. As they're evaluating technology like this. Right, perfect. So we're kind of coming along the home stretch here, but I figured we'd wrap it up with a couple of examples in here, just kind of our solution, slate safety solution, out in the field, being used, kind of an idea. So here, I'm sure some of you guys have already kind of gone on and you signed up for the webinar, just did a little looking on the RAECO Rents website, checked out the solution, do like all of us do and just do some research. But this is the slate safety solution right here. It's that arm-worn wearable. It's, if you see that picture on the screen right there, if you were to flip that over, that has that PPG sensor that we were just discussing on that person's skin. So it does need skin contact. And then that third bullet down is kind of the takeaway right there, is that with that sensor, that foundation that we described, we are building on that foundation. So we're able to show in real time the exertion of that worker, the heart rate, the core temperature of that worker. And then we also have a couple other features, as we call them in our tool, that help what we think enable a safer, more efficient work environment. So things like GPS toggleability on that device. You can either turn it on if it is interesting to you, turn it off, get that thing away from me if it's not interesting to you. And then this tap alert feature where proactively that worker that's wearing the solution, out, doing whatever type of job that they're doing, cutting grass, asbestos abatement, gardening, landscaping, working on the DOT, whatever. If they feel a certain way, if they feel unsafe, they feel like they're going to fall out, they can proactively trigger an alert to send out an alert. So well, it's great that we can get that information, fantastic, but that's not really the exciting part. The exciting part is that the organization is empowered to make their own alerts off of this information. So if I'm in charge of a job site, if I'm in charge of multiple sites, think back to those stakeholders, that worker, that project site, that enterprise. Depending on which level they fall in, it might be really important to know anytime one of these, well, me, the worker, anytime I trigger an alert, or anytime someone in this project site, they go over some threshold, and you can think of that threshold as being, heart rate of 120 for 5 minutes, or core temperature at 101.5 for this amount of time. Anytime the worker, those 10 workers, or these 10 sites, these hundreds of workers, anytime one of them goes over that threshold that I, as a company, feel unsafe with, trigger an alert. And that alert in our tool, it happens on a couple of levels. It happens on that worker. Think back to that previous slide. That worker level, that worker receives a vibration on their arm that lets them know that they triggered an alert. Then take that step up higher, that site level. That alert can be sent to a supervisor's phone, a manager's phone. It's a text-based alert that can occur. And then also we have the ability to send alerts to inside of our tool. There's an alert that pops up. Anybody that's authorized to view that, probably more at the enterprise level, they are going to see that alert. So now they'll know, worker 75 or Tom Smith, his core temperature exceeded this number for this amount of time. I mean, the hope is that there's some type of mitigation that can occur. Think back to our program, all those great tools that we're using. We want to use some of those tools. We want to be able to send somebody to the shade tent, send somebody to get some water. We want to provide some type of mitigation protocol that enables that possible heat stress event to be mitigated. We want to solve it with at the lowest possible level is the idea there. Now that Tom Smith, worker 75, whatever, however it's set up, now that worker is resting, they're sitting in the shade tent, they're taking their Powerade, they're resting. Their exertion is going to come down, obviously, their heart rate's going to come down, their core temperature is going to come down. And once it comes down to a sufficient level that, again, the organization, the program, feels comfortable with, then the technology can send a return to work. And again, it happens on those levels that we just talked about. The worker receives a different vibration on their arm. There's a different alert that can be configured to send out via text. Then there's also that different alert that occurs within the software tool, saying, hey, Tom Smith, they can safely return to work, kind of an idea. So that's the quick version on the Slate Safety device. But a lot of these tools that are out there that you guys may have already been investigating, they work in a very similar type of pattern where there's a wearable, or there's some type of device on somebody. It's collecting information, it's sensing information. It's going to go to some level, and then once it reaches some level, it's going to try to do something, try to get that information out to somebody, and that's exactly how our solution works. Okay. Here's our quick examples right here. So here's just an example. This is one of our military partners. This is a large DoD training facility, and a lot of these situations, whether there's differences certainly amongst industries and organizations for sure, but a lot of these processes, a lot of these things are very similar. Where, hey, we have a large workforce. They're spread out over a large distance. They're doing some type of very physically demanding work. There's a hot environment, or I'm wearing heavy PPE. It's a challenge, of course, to be able to understand how those workers are doing. So here, even though right now we're talking about a DoD training facility, the next one we're talking about an environmental remediation site, a lot of similarities. So here at this particular site, they have a problem, or excuse me, they had a large population of individuals that are doing this, very physically demanding work. This particular facility, it's a training pipeline for firefighters in the Department of Defense. You can see obviously some pictures there. But hey, we'd like to know anytime one of these individuals, one of these hundreds of people that we're in charge of the safety of, we'd like to know anytime they go above this predetermined level. And when that happens, provide an alert so that we can have training staff arrive on site, perform a visual check, provide any type of mitigation that needs to occur, pull them out of that environment that they're in, do that forearm submersion that we saw earlier that the military likes, whatever type of mitigation technique. And when that happens, allow us to solve that. So, with our solution, they've had it for a number of years now, and they've seen a tremendous reduction in their key metric. Their key metric is what they call fallouts, but it's really these heat stress over exertion events right there. And it's been a great success. Now, having said that, they've been at it for a long time, and just like any other program, there's a learning curve that occurs, and that would be much the same, as you were implementing, some other new type of technology, kind of an idea. But as the program gains speed, as the team feels, think back to that utility, that trust. As team feels more, they build more trust with the tool. The team administering it, they can gain more utility out of the tool. It bakes more into the processes. That's when things get really exciting, and you see that finely tuned machine kind of turn out there. So that's a little example right there. Just kind of basically how the tool could work. Here's another one. Here's another example. In this example, this is one of our large remediation sites. So these type of people, it's a different mission that they're on. These people are out there, of course, remediating, getting all that bad stuff out of these buildings, these environments, tearing things down. It's more or less construction, of course, with a heavy PPE, heavy safety dose in it. On this particular example that we're talking about right here, this customer site, they had a particular project that they were working on. Of course, you guys can see this. You guys know that the safety equipment well. I'm sure a lot of you guys are using similar type of PPE, similar type of work here. But when you're wearing that, of course, that heavy, those impermeables, right? You create that microclimate. That microclimate makes it very difficult, obviously, to cool somebody off because it's impermeable. You don't want that stuff coming in, so it's hard to get that stuff out as well. So physiological monitoring is obviously very interesting in these types of situations because people are doing that heavy work, because people are, physically demanding themselves. And this of course contrasts to the previous example. This worker population is vastly different than what we saw earlier. So there you're getting a little bit more into that individualistic nature of how some of these problems can occur. So this particular project is a construction project. They were essentially moving those big pumps right there. They were replacing some of those. There's a number of bad chemicals in there, very dangerous stuff. Had to be very safe. But to get, that's a new one going in, I'm pretty sure. But to get that old one out, it's some tough work, as I say. These are the types of jobs that, at the end of the shift, at the end of the day, you pour your boot out, and it's just, just full of sweat, kind of an idea. But what was interesting about this one, when we started to look at the people that were wearing the solution, here you're looking at some data right here. The top, of course, there's the time frame. This is alert data that we generated for this customer. This was kind of a custom thing, but certainly very interesting, and certainly a lot of our customers are interested in this type of information as well. But here you can see on the top chart, these are basically the person hours of data being collected per day. So you can look at it day by day. You can see, the different amount of data being collected. Obviously some days a little lower than others, higher than others, etc. And then at that bottom chart right there, you can see those alerts per day for those individuals that are wearing it. So now you have the number of the amount of work that's occurring on the top, and then those alerts that are basically, see the similar day periods. So between this time period, so this is when the heavy work was happening, the important work that it certainly necessitated some of the careful consideration, obviously, for any type of physiological event, heat stress activity. So they decided to, of course, implement physiological monitoring. So with our tool, between that time period, you can see that right there, a number of alerts occurred. But one of the key takeaways there is that there were no individuals that were wearing a device that were sent to medical for treatment. And it's exactly why you would think we're able to provide that kind of that nudge to let somebody solve for an issue on that lowest possible level. So this particular organization, they set their alert thresholds to a certain aspect or a certain level, excuse me. Now, whenever any one of those alerts occurs, that's when they implement that mitigation process. For this particular organization, there's a number of things that they do. They've even, recently started to implement what they call it's called taking a knee, but it's essentially just resting. As you're in some of these environments, you don't want to completely come out and take off all your PPE. So what's also interesting is that you can see on the alerts per day, this is one of those unintended consequences, but it's really kind of what we're searching for. You can see the alerts. You can see that trend in alerts. That trend in alerts is going down, and that's exactly what you're looking for. You're looking to drive change with a solution. Anytime, you guys know this, any manager, that's what you're looking for. Anytime you implement something, that tool is just not going to take care of itself. What you're looking for is that change to occur. So what's interesting is that, as people are focusing on these types of hazards, of course, people are focusing on these types of hazards. It's the same thing occurs whenever somebody starts to wear a solution that provides a nudge for them. This, very similar type of work is occurring throughout this time frame. But the workers, they're starting to understand, oh, okay, this is what this solution does. This is what my body feels like. You basically start self-regulating so that you don't hit that point that you're triggering alert. So that's something that you look for. You look for those trends to see that decrease in alert activity. And then the last thing right here is actually, it's a little bit behind the curtain. I figured it could be something interesting to kind of break out for this crew. Would love to hear some feedback on this before or after this presentation. But what we're working for, a number of our customers have started to look towards, hey, slate safety, the solution's great, the data's great. I would like to have a little more insight, a little more analytical prowess into what's happening here. So we started to come up with this new measurement. I guess I can see my slide going off the screen there. I apologize for that. But what's going on with this measurement that we're looking for is that we're looking for what we're calling a corrective action. So the goal of this little project that we're starting to stand up right now is that we want to provide a numerical data whenever an alert is, basically prompts a positive behavioral response. I mean, conversely, what we'll see is that we'll see when that behavioral response does not occur. So there's a couple of requirements as we go through this. This is just kind of a high-level view, but what we want is we want to provide some type of benchmark, some type of analytical tool that provides flexibility on a per organization standpoint. So we actually take into account during this calculation the different alert thresholds that different organizations certainly are taking, or even within that organization, there might be different alert thresholds depending on the different risk tolerance of that workforce. Think about that. Think about that accountant as opposed to that that person that's out laying bricks or something like that. Like, these are two different risk profiles, risk tolerances, totally different. We can actually set alerts based on those different risk profiles. And then with this idea of corrective actions, we can understand when those individual approaches triggered an alert and what happened after that idea. So at the highest level, and I got two quick slides to kind of show examples of these, but we walk through these alerts that were generated for a certain time frame. We exclude alerts that aren't interesting, and then we group basically the sample period together, and then we look for what occurred in that period, and then we look for that in that observation period. So when we do that, that's what we're looking for. Those changes, those corrective actions occurred, and those are corrective actions in our model, where either there's a return to work, we described that earlier, that occurs, or this crossover event where it was obvious that the worker was removed from some type of stimuli that allowed their body to basically go into this rest period where their heart rate comes down, their core temperature comes down, etc. So that's how we do it. And then just real quick on the here we go. What it looks like from a visual standpoint. Here's basically a quick diagram. You can see right there, there's a sample period. This is very clean. This is the cleanest one that you could get, and it just nicely illustrates the concept. Where you can see this is core temperature information that you can see is climbing. It reaches some level, it triggers some alert, and now you see that decrease in the core temperature of the individual, and you see that observation period. You see that return to work. So that would we would classify that as a corrective action right there. Now there's this other scenario where there's someone wearing a device that's working, they're working, and they might trigger multiple alerts in a short time window, short time frame. We want to bundle those up because they're most likely all part of the same occurrence. We want to bundle those up, and then we want to look into the future and see, hey, did that return to work happen? Did it? No? Okay. Was there a crossover event that happened? So with that bundling of that information, we're looking towards the future, and then we're looking to see, did that person, in this example right here, did that person's core temperature fall? Did it fall sufficiently to warrant, we think, some type of change that occurred in real life? And here you can quickly see, that's what we're looking for in this example. So this originally started because we were working with a customer that was interested in this information, and this is the final example right here, more or less the final slide. This large food manufacturer, they of course have an issue with heat stress, working indoors, mind you, in one of these very industrial food manufacturing type of place. Here's just some generic. These are some generic photos to kind of get you guys thinking what it's like in there. But it's very similar. Hey, we have hundreds of workers at multiple sites on multiple shifts. We'd like to know anytime one of those individuals they go into that area that we feel uncomfortable with, they trigger an alert. So for this particular customer, we've just started to kind of still really basically a proof of concept. That's why I was saying bringing you guys behind the curtain a little bit. But since we've started to identify this, we started to look, you can see the information right there. A lot of person hours recorded during this phase of the project. But what we're looking at those alerts, and then we're bundling those as needed. That's why you see those 20 alerts total, and then you see it bundled as these 13 possible heat stress events. And then we're looking for that corrective action. And again, that corrective action occurs on either, hey, we can see that there was a return to work and some type of decline, whatever metric, or we have a high degree of certainty that there was a decline even without a return to work. And then you can see basically, hey, there's a rate that can occur where, hey, this is, we're seeing alerts, but we're not changing behavior enough, as much as we should. Let's investigate this. Let's check this out. And that all kind of goes into that bundle of, looking a little more closely at the data to affect that change. So I want to speed up there at the end just to make sure we had time, but that's really the last slide that I had right there. I would encourage you guys, if anybody out there is interested, this is really cool technology. It's probably something that a lot of you guys have explored. We've heard on more than one occasion that, hey, we've been doing physiological monitoring this way. It's been kind of a square peg and round hole kind of an idea. We think that we have a solution that can help in certain circumstances, maybe certainly not all circumstances. But if you guys are interested in that, I highly ask you to go out and talk to our friends at RAECO Rents, talk to them about getting getting a solution out there to give it a shot. So that's kind of it for the presentation. I'll turn it back over to Matt. And
yeah, we do have some questions here, so I'll start going through them.
Yes.
Just wanted to, first of all, let you all know the April 2023 issue of the Synergist is going to talk about this quite a bit, focusing on heat stress. Somebody had a question about the lone worker. Is it only a tap to get the lone worker alert, or if somebody actually falls and can't tap the thing, does an alert go off for that?
That's a great question. So right now it is just a tap alert. The idea of a fall detection is something very interesting to us, and it's something very interesting to a lot of our customers. We are actively working on that right now, but there's also some variants to that we're also testing with some of our customers. Some of that includes, things like some people have started to ask for basically a no movement detected, which is somewhat similar, a little bit different use case. But what's exciting with a tool like ours is that we actively listen to all of these, and so we are building these new features that are exciting because it is interesting to people. So it won't be too long before even customers right now where you'll log into the tool, you don't have fall detection now, you don't have no movement detected now. You receive an over-the-air update to the device, new software update, and you'll be able to turn on these new features. So now basically the next day you'll be able to turn on fall detection, turn on no movement detected. It's coming.
Okay. Somebody mentions they have concerns about the claim of core temperature. This is predicted core temperature, not measured. There's an amount of measurement uncertainty associated with this predicted core temperature. Is that taken into consideration?
That's a great question, and that's something certainly that we've heard a lot of. And I was looking in the chat. I guess the QR code wasn't working, and I'll find that link or I'll share it with.
We found it, and it's been shared to all. Okay,
perfect. So here at the Slate Safety team, I can attest that we've swallowed a lot of core temperature pills. We feel very comfortable that it's not of course it's not medical grade core temperature estimation, and that's not needed out in the field. Any one of these tools that we're talking about is certainly going to have some type of error associated with it. The question is really, is that error adequate enough for what we're trying to do? So in that QR code that we found the link for, we actually partnered with University of Alabama, and they performed a core temperature validation study that actually looked at that exact thing. So in that study, of course, you can read it, but they had a population Now, admittedly, this is the population in that study was different than kind of what the examples that we talked about here. It was a largely female population, and they were nurses. They were looking at emergency situations in emergency rooms. But the idea that a solution, like this, that use that type of technology that we described, that it can come in close enough to that golden standard core temperature, we feel very strongly about that, and that's what that study shows. Now, we've also done additional studies. We've been blessed to have firefighter recruits that would go through recruit training wearing a rectal thermometer and wearing our solution, and we've basically look at the validation between those two data points. Luckily for me, I've only done the core temperature one, but we've swallowed a lot of pills. So from our stance, we feel very comfortable that there's a nice similarity between those two methods. And then when you weigh the pros and the cons, it's much nicer to ask somebody to wear a device like this than a rectal thermometer.
Okay, I got two sort of related questions. One is, how does perspiration affect the readings? And the next one is, I did not see sweat output rate in the metrics. Can you measure it?
Ooh, so sweat output is something very interesting, for sure. And in the space that we live in, we have a lot of interesting conversations with a lot of interesting people, for sure. Now, the current device that we're talking about right here, it does not have really the hardware inside of it to essentially measure any type of sweat output right now. And now, in the future, there certainly could be, and some people are certainly working on it. Maybe somebody that asked that is one of those people that's working on it. But there's certainly some interesting work that is occurring to be able to provide that type of information in a more usable way. Now, the second part of the question was, so to say that, no, we currently do not have that capability. But the second part of that is, how does perspiration affect that device? So we've designed our device to account for the microclimate that occurs in when somebody's wearing that device. So our device is waterproof. We certainly have people that swim in it. We are currently undergoing intrinsic safety certification right now, and with that comes a whole host of things. But one of those things is dustproof, waterproof. Is it? And our solution is.
How do you calculate core temperature and exertion from the measurements that are actually made?
Great question. So I'll take the exertion one first. So our exertion algorithm, it's on our website if you guys want to check it out. But what we're doing there is, if anybody on here is a physiologist, but there's a tool, basically the physiological strain index that people are looking at. So we're really looking at that tool to provide that calculation. So with that calculation, you guys could look it up. What we're doing is we're providing the real-time heart rate into that calculation amongst some of those other variables that are documented. We're putting that together into an understandable way, and we're just essentially giving it a 0, you are not exerted, to 100%, you are exerted, you're maxing out, kind of an idea. So that ability to provide that real-time calculation, that real-time communication, that real-time algorithm is kind of the bread and butter there. As far as our core temperature algorithm, what we're doing with that, this is, of course, this is one of the things that's most interesting to us in our company. It's, of course, one of these, it's our own proprietary algorithm on how we're calculating that. So, we wouldn't go too deep into that. But some of those things that are into it, that are inputs into it, are going to be the heart rate of that individual, and that makes a heck of a lot of sense. How's the heart rate doing on that individual? And then some accelerometry and some smart things to basically say, hey, that's real information that we're getting. This is what we're seeing, kind of an idea. Contrast that to maybe sometimes people ask about the skin temperature of that solution. Are you guys doing that? Are you guys doing any type of environmental monitoring from that device? And the answer to that are no, we're not doing that. And that occurs. That's a few different reasons, but like we were saying, a lot of times with the PPE, sometimes the environment's kind of a tricky thing to, just doesn't add a whole lot to the model. It's basically how that looks.
Okay. It says ACGIH TLV for heat strain also includes recovery heart rate minute after peak work effort. Does this device measure recovery heart rate?
That's a great question. And so we partner very closely with ACGIH. We love the people over there. They're of course doing some really cool things. And we found out very early on that hey, if we wanted to talk to industrial hygienists, it shouldn't be Chris talking to him. We should talk to somebody that's been doing this for a long time. We have a lot of friends in the industrial hygiene community. So that science-backed ACGIH knowledge that they've built up over the 80+ years, that's very important to us. So we work very closely with them. And we like to think that we're providing some insight into, hey, these are some new things out here, kind of an idea. And that kind of goes full circle with same thing with OSHA, trying to bring awareness to, hey, there's some new things out here, kind of an idea. And then that helps write the regulations who can allow workers to better implement solutions that are more safe, that allow for more innovation. It kind of becomes this virtuous circle. The idea is that is there a heart rate calculation? We've gone through and we've actually digitized those guidelines from ACGIH, so that more or less at a few clicks, you can be following those guidelines. Now we currently have the 2022. We're looking to implement the 2023 guidelines here rather soon, but that's the idea there. And with those calculations, the resting heart rate, and how things are, we are taking that into account.
What's the battery life?
Good question. So the battery life on that device, we make it toggleable, so you can turn off features, turn on features depending on the workload, work environment. One of those features that is very battery intensive is of course GPS. So even if you have GPS turned on, all the bells and whistles, turned on, it's glowing, it's got so much functionality. That'll get about 20 hours of battery life. Then, just because GPS is such a consumer of it, you can turn that off if that's not interesting to you. If you guys know, if your team knows where everybody is, you can turn that off, and then you can more or less triple the battery life. Now you're just, it's not important where these people are. It's just more important that they know how they're doing and to be able to send out alerts. And then I guess just to round that out, from completely dead to full battery, it's about 3.5 hours.
Okay. How is exertion measured and in what units? Is it the same as metabolic rate?
That's a great question. So in our tool, and our exertion is our own metric. It's not, it's not something that you're going to see in, any type of, guidelines or anything like that. It's something that we think is interesting. In fact, some of our customers have started to gravitate towards that because it does fit a little bit more, provides a little bit more, insight into how somebody's doing. So our metric in our tool is just measured on, it's a percentage. That's all it is. It's just a percent on how well that person is doing. Now taking that into account, it is that physiological strain, formula aspect that we looked at, but we try to make it a little more usable, a little more user-friendly, and it kind of falls into our bucket of easy to use kind of solution where, it would be very nice for me to be able to look at a tool, see the, green means go, yellow means take it easy, red means stop. And along that method, 0% exerted means I should be good. 100% exerted means I probably need to take a break.
Can you program the age of worker to measure sustained heart rate in excess of 180 beats per minute by age? Maybe that's what they're asking.
Let's see here. Let me think that one through here. Sustained heart rate by age. We have certainly, at the request of particular customers, we have certainly looked at information. It's more of kind of a custom reporting feature that we tend to offer if somebody's interested in that type of stuff. But we currently don't have the ability to for you to log into the tool for you to look at that particular aspect of it. But we do, and this is certainly something that we take into account is we do take into account that age aspect if the customer offers it. If they don't offer it, if they don't like it, if it's a privacy issue, our tool can function without it. It just becomes more of kind of default values that you would use as inputs.
Okay. Has Slate Safety reviewed the AIHA alarm settings process to see how well it works with the band?
Yes. So we, depending on who exactly is asking that question, I would love to talk more. But we're still relatively newcomer to the industrial hygiene space. We're starting to have a lot of great friends in some of these organizations, and the AIHA is one of those areas that we do have great friends, and we want to have more friends. So we have reviewed a number of documents of both AIHA, ACGIH, NIOSH, a number of those. And I would probably admit that we're probably not doing everything that all the organizations are asking us, but it's certainly our intent to become an industry standard that helps with these guidelines and helps implement these in a more effective way.
Okay. Does it require medical personnel to interpret the data? Can you comment on compliance with HIPAA regulation while generating personal medical data?
That's a great question, and that's something we tend to hear a lot with. We tend to talk to a lot of just interested people, even whether it's a conversation like this or at a trade show, or somebody who's actively going through a pilot or wants to pilot. The idea around HIPAA is certainly important. Sometimes it might not be, it might not be the exact thing that somebody's asking about. Kind of the broader question is typically around privacy. And privacy has a more general term than HIPAA. HIPAA's almost a little more narrow respect, but the intent's really the same. The intent's the exact same, is that, hey, who can see this data, and who has access to this data? So the idea in our tool is that there's a number of tactics that we can implement to help de-identify that information, so that when somebody's wearing a device, they might be, of course, some data is coming through, but that data that's being received can never be connected, or it would be very challenging to be able to connect that information to that person's name, any type of those real identifying marks that are, in that more narrow aspect of privacy. So in that respect, we do have a number of tactics that we can implement, that we have implemented, that our customers are currently using today to help with those factors, for sure.
Yeah, I know Illinois has pretty stringent biometric privacy laws. I think it's called BIPA, B-I-P-A. I've been looking into it recently. And somebody asked about that in particular. I know when I was looking into it recently, you need to get sign off by the employee that you're going to use, biometrics.
Sure, exactly, and that's one of those things that we tend to discover, as somebody's interested in technology like this, and then you start kind of socializing it internally and start looking into it. One, I'll just admit again that a tool like this is not for everybody in every situation at every facility, for sure. But a lot of times you'll find out that kind of the employee, it was kind of part of the standard package when an employee signed up. Maybe they they were using that information for temperature checks during COVID. That's of course one thing, or any number of medical surveillance kind of programs. But that's certainly something to investigate, to look at, to bring in those three stakeholder levels that we talked about earlier.
Somebody does ask about cost. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, I would typically refer to our friends over at RAECO Rents. If you are interested in the solution, I highly recommend you to reach out to them to discuss the price of the solution. I can tell you they'll cut you a great deal, that's for sure.
All right. That's pretty much it, I think. We're going to go through. We're kind of over time now anyway. So, Chris, I want to thank you for your presentation. If there are any other specific questions, you can email me, mattd@raecorents.com, or call us at 866-RENT-EHS. You can also email us at webinars@raecorents.com. If you want to know any more about technology we supply, please visit the website, raecorents.com. We have a technical center with videos of these webinars and other things we've done. If you want to look at there, and there's manuals and guides out there. We do record all these sessions. We'll be sending out a link here in the next couple days. That's it. I want to thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Matt. Thanks.
All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.